Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us for the ATD San Diego chapters Get Good with Storyline. My name is John Morley. I am a instructional designer and an external consultant. And I'm getting my email address here. So that's me. And who are you? Please take a moment to write your name in the chat window along with where you're logging in from. And if you'd like to network with other participants, putting your email address in the chat window would make that a whole lot easier. No one knows everything about Storyline, especially me. So this is our opportunity to talk shop and share what we do know. Toward that end, we are fortunate to have with us this evening Joe Waddington. Joe has been a session leader at DevLearn, and in his 20 years of experience in transferring knowledge, Joe has developed e-learning for 3 different state agencies in Washington State, and he now leads a community of practice for e-learning. His email address I will be putting into the chat window here. Okay, Joe, would you like to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I don't want to talk to that person that's calling my personal cell phone. I'm here with you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I recognize some names from my LinkedIn connections, some people that I've seen around and kind of followed along. So thank you all for being here. A little bit about me. I work for Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, and we are responsible for providing services to all the other state agencies in Washington government. I've been doing e-learning for, I'd say, about 12 years now, and been in the training field for over 20. When I first started e-learning, accessibility wasn't a focus of mine. It wasn't even on my radar. When I first started developing e-learning, I worked for the Department of Corrections in Washington. And of course, nobody who had a disability could possibly work for the Department of Corrections, right? Yeah. And so it wasn't on our radar. And then I started working for enterprise services. But when I first started, I was doing systems training, teaching people how to use different computer systems within our agency. And my boss's philosophy at the time was, well, the systems that we're teaching aren't accessible, so we don't have to make our courses accessible. Okay, great. So it wasn't until I moved into the HR portion of DES and I started creating statewide e-learning that e-learning had to, or accessibility really had to be a priority for me. Luckily, I had a good mentor to help me along the way. And over the years, I've become what I call a reluctant expert. I got knowledgeable about accessibility because I had to be, because it was part of my job, because I had to know these things to make sure that the courses I create were accessible. But it was a tough journey for me, and it was a tough road to go down. And for me as a full-time developer, if it was that hard for me as a full-time developer, then how much more troublesome would it be for an e-learning developer who was maybe doing this, creating e-learning as 5% other duties as assigned. They were only doing it as a portion of their job. And so I created a statewide workshop for teaching people how to use or how to make sure that their courses are accessible. And so you all are going to get the condensed version of that. That workshop is normally 7 to 8 hours, and I'm going to try and do it in 45 minutes. So that tells you something. All right, let's see. John, you got that link to the Storyline folder?
Yeah, let me bring that up. Just one moment here.
Okay, so that link is to the Storyline file that I'll be working in today. If you want to grab it and follow along, or just kind of see what I'm doing, that's the one I'll be working on today. Okay. Just a little bit of stats because I'm a stats guy. Over 61 million Americans in the United States live with some form of disability. That's about 26% of the population. 16 million of those have a hearing disability, and 12 million of those have a vision disability. So that's a lot of people out there that if we don't take the time and take the steps to make sure that our courses are accessible, that we're potentially leaving out. And so we want to make sure we have to take these steps to make sure that our courses are accessible to everyone, that everyone can see the content. If we're creating content that only half or only a portion of our organization can see, then we're doing a disservice to those who can't. So there are some rules around accessibility. There are two governing areas. The first is Section 508. Section 508 is part of the Rehabilitation Act in 1973. It was actually an amendment in 1998. And it is a federal law, so it applies to all federal agencies. And because I work for a state organization that receives federal funding, I have to comply with those laws. What Section 508 says is that it requires electronic and information technology to be accessible to people with disabilities. Its goal is to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access to electronic information and technology. Now, think about the technology from 1998 and what was in place back then versus where we are now. There was an update to Section 508 in 2017 to bring it in line with the next group. The next group is a set of rules or a set of guidelines called WCAG, which stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. WCAG is developed by a group called the World Wide Web Consortium, and if that's not the name of an evil empire, I don't know what is, but they are not. They set web guidelines, not just around accessibility, but web content in general. They're the reason that you can log into any browser on any computer and still be able to access information. They're the reason that you're able to access a website from your phone and your computer and your tablet. They set standards around building websites. And one of the things that they did is set some expectations around accessibility. They set some guidelines, the WCAG. The thing about the W3C, though, is they have no mandate authority. They're just a group of experts, web experts that got together and said, we think these should be the guidelines. But they are globally accepted by governments and organizations as an organization of authority. And so they have set these guidelines around what's accessible. And everybody seems to follow them. WCAG 2.0 was released in 2008, which tells you it's starting to get a little long in the tooth now. And they're working on an update for 3.0. But they continue to make small tweaks and small adjustments. With WCAG 2.0, there are 3 levels of accessibility that they try to set. A is the bare minimum, AA, and then AAA is the top tier. Most of the groups that I work with shoot for AA compliance and making sure that they meet the AA requirements. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to go pretty fast on this. John and I had this conversation before the conference or before this thing started, because I'm trying to condense so much information into a short period of time. And I've had caffeine. It's going to go pretty fast. If you have any questions, throw them into chat. I may not get to the questions till the end of the presentation. I'll stick around long after this presentation is done to answer any questions and try and get to all the questions that were asked in chat. So please bear with me as I go through this. All right, let's talk about articulate and accessibility. Articulate, when it first started out, wasn't focused on accessibility. It took over the years to really start to take the steps necessary to ensure that courses are accessible, or ensure that developers had the tools necessary to make it accessible. Since the release of Articulate 360 and Storyline 360, Articulate's done a lot to help us as developers ensure that our current content is accessible. I'm going to throw a link into chat. This link is Articulate's report on how Articulate Storyline meets the requirements, WCAG and 508 requirements. With 360, they are continually making updates and changes to address accessibility issues as they arise. They're publishing updates about once a month, and at least in every couple updates, there's an accessibility update. With all these changes, with all these things that they do, I've talked to developers that go, hey, Articulate's accessible, so the courses I make are accessible. But Articulate Storyline doesn't do it by itself. There are steps that we as developers have to take to make sure that our courses meet those requirements. Okay. I've broken this up into 3 different steps, from easiest to hardest, and to try and get us to give you some basic steps that you can start to take to make sure that your courses are accessible, or start towards that accessible requirement. We're going to talk about color contrast. We're going to talk about captions. And then the last half of this is going to be focused on focus order and what that looks like, because that seems to take the most time. Let's start with color contrast and color blindness. Color contrast is designed to help those learners who are colorblind. And I'll be honest with you, when I thought about disabilities and thought about making my courses accessible, color contrast wasn't anywhere on my list. But WCAG has some requirements around color contrast. And when we think about it, color blindness affects a significant portion of our population. 1 in 12 men suffer from some form of color blindness. For women, it's 1 in 200. And when we think about color blindness, we tend to think in the extremes, that it's either they see color or they don't. And there's achromatopsia, which is only sees grays. But the reality of it is only about 1,000th of 1% of the population suffers from that, where they can only see grays. 99% of people who suffer from color blindness suffer in this box here. And this is what we call the red-green color blindness, where they have problems differentiating between reds and greens and other colors. There are a number of websites out there that you can go on, and you can see how these different types of color blindness affect an image. And it's really interesting, even with just a stoplight. And imagine not being able to differentiate between red and green, or if they start to blur together, how that affects just looking at a stoplight. And so if you get a chance, go out and check that out. For the requirements, for the guidelines, WCAG has set certain requirements for contrast depending on your level. For us at AA, we'll talk about the AA requirements, but they set contrast ratio. And the ratio is the color difference between one color and another. And so to understand this, a 1-to-1 contrast is a color on itself. So black text on a black background or white text on a white background, that's a 1-to-1 ratio. The other end of that extreme is 21-to-1, black text on a white background or vice versa. For WCAG AA, the requirements are 4.5 to 1 for what they call normal text, and 3 to 1 for large text. And they say normal text is 12-point font, large text is 18-point font or 14-point font bolded. But those font sizes are kind of hard for us as e-learning developers, because we build a course and then we tell it to blow it up to the size of the screen. And so it may start out as 12-point font, but by the time the user's blown it up to fit the screen, it's now a 14, a 20, a 32. It's larger than it was intended. But for me as a developer, I am always going to shoot for that 4.5 to 1 ratio. And that's kind of the measure that I'm going to use. For us as developers, what's all this mean? How do I measure contrast? We got to test it. Luckily, there are websites out there. I'm going to link to one right now. And I'm going to pull that up into my window. Can you all see the WebAIM? Okay. So let me tell you about WebAIM. WebAIM is a great website for web accessibility. They have resources and guidelines and how-tos and lots of really good information. One of the things they offer is this contrast checker, where you can test the contrast of two colors. It labels it as foreground and background, but it really doesn't matter because the contrast ratio doesn't change whether it's on the foreground or the background. The ratio is going to stay the same. In order to test the contrast, you have to know the hex code. So let's go back to Storyline and let's figure out how to get the hex code. In Storyline, to get the hex code, now they've made an update recently that made it a lot easier and a lot less clicks to be able to get the requirement or get the hex code from it. And you select an object and you go up to Format and Shape Fill. And if you've updated Storyline in the last couple of months, your color selector is changed and you'll see this. If you haven't updated Storyline in the last couple of months, then all you'll probably see is the color bar, and it'll take you a couple extra clicks to get to this. But I'd strongly recommend going out and updating Storyline because they do add some really cool features over the last couple of months. But the hex code is right here. And all I have to do is copy and paste that into this site, and I paste that number. And as soon as I hit enter, notice that the color changes. I go back here and I do the same thing for the font. I click in the text box. I go to the font. I find the font color, and there's the font color. I copy, and you don't want to read my emails. And I paste it into there, hit enter. And now it tells me all kinds of information. It tells me that the contrast ratio for these two colors is 4.3 to 1. It tells me that if I'm trying to reach WCAG AA for normal text, I've failed. And for AA, I'm passing it. And if you look at the AA, you go, oh yeah, that kind of works. Even on the normal text, it's like, yeah, I can see those colors fine, but it doesn't quite meet the requirements for contrast. And so what I have to do as a developer, I have to either adjust the dark color and make it darker, and you could do this on the fly just here and go, okay, or I have to make the lighter color lighter to get that contrast until I find a number. And hopefully you don't have an organization or an administration that says you have to use these colors. Hopefully they give you a little bit of a leeway to be able to shift around just enough so that you can meet this contrast requirement. For us as developers, what it means is we have to make sure that we aren't using color as a sole form of communication. And so telling a user to click on the green button isn't going to work. We want to make sure that we're using something other than color to communicate. And so tell the user to click on the green check mark or click the yes button. That way they can see, and it's not dependent on the color of the button. It doesn't mean that you can't use red or green. It just means you can't use color as the sole form of communication. Okay. One of the things that I do at the very beginning of a course, when I start a new course, is I create a style guide slide that identifies, okay, these are the colors that I'll be using. These are the hex codes for that color. And this is the color font that I'm going to use if I have that color in the background. I generally stick to white or black fonts just so that it's easier for me to meet this requirement. But if you're going to use different colors, you're going to want to make sure that you test it with the colors. Then you can go into Storylines Design, and you can create a color theme using those colors with everything tested. Okay. All right. That's color contrast and addressing. You do this at the very beginning, and then you can pretty much set it and forget it. You may have to test every now and then if you have text on images or things like that. But getting this step out of the way at the very beginning will help you ensure that your courses are meeting that color contrast requirement.
I have a quick question
Yeah.
regarding the color palettes. Are the standard color palettes available there? You know, you brought down that design tab there, or the design tab with all those color palettes. Are those checked for this sort of accessibility that we can kind of rely upon some of these to meet these requirements?
The color palettes aren't, because the color palettes they're just the colors. If you're going to use those colors, let's say I changed it to this color, and now I'd have to go through and test the font colors against those colors, those base colors, to check and make sure that it's still meeting the requirements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. But we could create our own design color palette and save it onto our system that we can rely upon as meeting these requirements, and then just that be the go-to, right? You don't have
Yes,
to do it each project.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And Articulate, if you have 360, it has the templates that you have access to through the Articulates. Articulate has said that they've tested their templates and made sure that they're accessible. I'd still double check, but that's a way to, if you're using templates, Articulate's templates, they're saying that those have been tested. I'd still double check it. I'm going to move right along. Like I said, I'm going to try and get through all the stuff that I have to present, and then stick around afterwards for as many questions as you all want to ask me. All right, the next section, the next thing we talk about is captions. And this is another low-hanging fruit, and Articulate is made easy for us to be able to make sure that we have captions. And the change between Articulate Storyline 2, if you all worked in Storyline 2, they didn't have the ability to do captionings. And you had to manually enter it in and time text boxes to appear and disappear, and it was truly painful. Now they've made it easy peasy, and so it's a lot easier for us to address. For captions, we have two ways of addressing it. We have captions and we have transcripts. Captions can be either open or closed. Open is always on, and closed is the ability to turn captions off and on. And then transcripts are basically the narration, the script in a form on the slide. And I'm going to start with transcripts. Are easy to do. All you have to do is copy and paste your script into the notes section and it'll appear. If you go to preview, if you preview that slide,
Yeah, it's a pretty simple slide. It should have shown up.
well, I think the preview defaults to the scene. And so,
Okay.
and I know that I just got click happy. So if you preview and you've turned on the notes in the
You've selected your candidate.
oh,
You'll need to review your
it'll appear over here in the notes section. But notes is great, but notes means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And if your users don't know that notes equals transcripts, then they're not going to know to click that tab. And so we want to make it easy and make it blatant so that they know exactly what that tab is. And Articulate has created a way that you can rename that tab so that it says transcript. And I'm going to show you how to do that. If you go up to Home and go up to the player menu, first you want to make sure that that notes tab is turned on. But then you go up here to text labels. And in the text labels window, there's like a gazillion text labels. I don't know where all these things are. I just go down to where I find notes tab. And you can rename this. You can say, I don't want that to say notes tab. I want this to say transcript. I hit enter and update the preview. And now in the preview, it will have menu and transcript so that it is easy for your learners to find and know exactly what they're looking at. When I preview this slide,
You've selected your candidate. You'll need to review your organization's policy.
That's one of the first things I recommend to everybody is go out and change that note tabs to say exactly what you want it to say. It is the transcript, and make it easy for your learners to find the transcript for the slide. Okay. All right. So transcripts, copy and paste, real easy. For the captions, it's relatively easy. Once you've imported your audio file, whether you're recording your audio file in Storyline itself or importing it from someplace else. I do all my audio narration recording in Audacity, and then import it into Storyline. But once you have it, you select the file, either on the timeline or on the screen. And you'll notice up here, you click Audio Tools option, and there's a button there that says Add Captions. When you click Add Captions, you get a handy dandy window with your audio file, and they've even put
You'll need to review your organization. You've selected your candidate. You've selected your candidate.
little blocks on where it thinks it should break up for your captions. And then you have your transcript, or hopefully you have a Word document off to the side where you can just copy and paste your script into these blocks. Otherwise, you have to manually type and enter it. I have a document over here with the transcript in here, and I can just copy and paste it in.
You'll need to review your organization's policies and procedures.
As you click each box, it'll read to you what it says. I find that section in my script and I paste.
For verifying compensation and extending the offer.
You have the ability to add or delete these. Let's say I wanted the whole sentence to be transcribed instead of it breaking up. I can delete a block and stretch this out
You'll need to review your organization's policies and procedures for verifying compensation and extending the offer.
And paste the rest in there.
So you're saying that Articulate will not do the speech to text for you. You have to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Articulate will not do a transcription for you. And so we'll talk about that in a second if you don't have that option. But hopefully you've got the script off to the side where you can do this. All right. WCAG requires captions for any audio content. So that's one way to do this. I'm going to show you, and that's basically the only way to add captions. You have the ability to import. Let's say you have a video that maybe you've gotten from YouTube or gotten from a vendor, and hopefully they've given you a script or a transcript for it. And if you're real lucky, they've given you the caption file for it. If you don't have a caption file for a video, there are a number of websites online. Rev.com is the one that I think our organization has been using that will transcribe your videos. Let's say you have a recording of a webinar that you don't have the script for, but you need the transcripts for, and you need the thing. You can pay this website a nominal fee, and by nominal, it's like $1 a minute. And they will provide you with the transcript and the caption file for it. The caption file is a different format. It's usually a VTT or SRT file. And once you have that, you can go in and you can add, or not add, X out of that. You can import, now I bunkered up, import the SRT file into Storyline, and it will add the captions for you. And this is a 10-minute video, so if I click on edit, it's going to take a couple of minutes for it to come up. While it's coming up, I'm going to talk about some standards for captioning. WCAG doesn't have any set guidelines on how long captions should be or how many words to include. I did a little bit of searching early on and found a document from the BBC of all places that had some caption guidelines that I've pretty much followed. And that is, they recommend captions should be 1 to 3 lines, no more than 3 lines, and a standard of 30 to 45 characters per line. I don't expect you to go and count every single character. Word has the ability to, if you select a portion in a Word document and go down here to where it has a word count, and if you click on that, it'll tell you, hey, this is 22 characters or 22 characters without spaces, 25 characters with spaces. That gives you a general estimate on how long a portion is. But as long as you get close to that, you're okay. And this is still taking forever. There it is. So if you import the SRT file or the VTT file, you'll see that it automatically has everything timed out for you and the blocks, and it will play along with the video. So if you have a recording for a webinar or something like that you're turning into or including as part of an e-learning, you're going to need the captions for that, and you're probably going to have to contract that out or spend hours trying to figure out what they said. For $1 a minute, I think it's worth sending it out to let somebody else do it.
I'm sorry, Joe. Can you say the name of the company you use again?
I believe it's rev.com. Let me Google that real quick. Yep, rev.com. And they'll do it for, like I said, for a nominal fee. And it'll save you hours of work. And their turnaround time is actually pretty quick too. You can get it within the next day usually. One little hack I want to show you is I do a lot of prototyping, especially with SMEs, and so I'll use Articulate 360 or Storyline 360's text to speech feature, or robo voice as I affectionately call it, to do the narration before I actually do the recording. I don't do the recording until the very end because things change. And but what you can do is you can use Articulate's text to speech to generate a audio file. And notice up here in the top right hand corner it says generate closed captions. You make sure that box is checked, and when you insert it, it inserts the audio file. And if you click edit captions, you'll see that the captions are in there. Now, what you can do is, okay, it's later and I've actually recorded it and this script hasn't changed. You can take this file and go to replace audio and replace it with the actual recording. And when you do that, if you click edit captions, the captions will still be there. You're going to have to adjust the timing on it to meet, because your narrator isn't going to speak at the same rate as your robo voice, but the captions are in there. And I thought it was an interesting little hack. I'm not entirely sure it saves me time, but I thought I'd share it with you just as a kind of cool feature. Okay. All right. That's for hearing impaired. Next, we get into visual focus order, which helps both visually impaired and physically impaired learners. The focus order is focusing on each element on the screen that is currently active or selected. I spoke with a blind user and he used this analogy that really struck home for me. Imagine being in a dark room and having a flashlight that could only look at one thing at a time. That's what the focus order does. It highlights one thing at a time for the user to be able to either see or interact with. Okay. Screen readers have specific keys that they can use to move from one object in the focus order to the next. And keyboard users have the tab key to tab from one interactive object to the next, and the space bar or enter key to click. That is their click action. But imagine going through a course that you can't use a mouse. Could you say that the courses that you've built today, you could navigate and see all the content with just a keyboard and mouse? Okay. Something to think about. There's one interaction that comes to mind that is automatically out, and that's drag and drop, because drag and drops by their very nature. You have to be able to see where you're clicking and see where you're going to drop it on. Those drag and drops aren't accessible. And there's not anything that you can do to really make them accessible. So for us, we have to focus on the focus order and that's the order in which we want the learner to interact with things on our screen, whether it's being read by a screen reader or they're interacting with a button or doing an action on the screen. Articulate automatically sets the focus order. If you go up here to the home bar, there's a button that says focus order. When you click on the focus order, it lists everything on the screen. Every single object that you have on the screen will be listed in this. This is a fairly simple slide. There's not that many. If you have a slide with a bunch of objects animating in and out, going all over the place, they're going to all be on here. So we're going to need to start to take those things that aren't important to the learner out of the focus order. Because we put a lot of things in our e-learning courses to make our courses look pretty, to make our courses visually appealing, that don't really add anything to the learning. And when we start to think about focus order, it's thinking about taking all that clutter out of it so that the visually impaired learner with the screen reader doesn't have to read all the rectangle 1s and all the line 2s, and it gets them to just what's important. So let's take this slide. This is a basic title slide. Not a lot of objects on this slide. When I go to the focus order, not a lot on here. I'll tell you the default setting for the focus order is it goes from top to bottom, left to right. So the thing at the very top left corner of your screen is going to be the first thing on your on the focus order list, and the thing at the bottom right of the screen will be the last thing on your list. So let's look at this slide and start to figure out what's important. The first thing on this slide is the picture, because that's the thing that's up in the top left-hand corner. There is, with pictures, you as a developer are going to have to make a decision. Is this picture important to the learning, or is it what I call window dressing? Is it there just to make things look pretty or give the sighted user something to look at? If it's not important to the learning, you take it out. You get rid of it. You take it out of the focus order. If it's important to the learning, then you have to add alt text to it. And alt text is basically a short description of what the image is, but you have to make sure in that alt text that you convey whatever learning that you wanted the learner to see in that image, so that when the visually impaired learner, the screen reader user, is looking at it, the screen reader reads what was important about that image. Okay. So you have the ability to add alt text, and whatever you type there, the screen reader is going to pick up. But if the image isn't important to the learning, get rid of it. Take it out. And to take it out, you either hit the delete button or there's a handy dandy delete key down here. Now, we get this oval shape that's on the frame of this course title. That oval shape's just there for looks. It does nothing. Get rid of it. Hit delete. Okay. Same with that second oval shape that's inside the first one. Get rid of it. Now we finally come to some text and the welcome to. Welcome to might be important to the learning. It tells the learner, hey, thanks for being part of our course. But that line in between the welcome to and the course title, again, it's window dressing. Get rid of it. Hit the delete button. So now we're left with only two things in our focus order: welcome to and the course title. You hit save. And now when the screen reader goes through it, all it's going to see is the welcome to course title. If you get delete happy, which I've been known to do, you can add things back into the object or into the focus order. You can add everything back or just individual items. Okay. Just by clicking this bottom plus button and add these things back into the focus order. Okay. All right. This is a pretty simple slide, though. This is a really basic slide. What if we have something like this? So for the sighted user, I'm looking at this slide and I see types of workplace violence. I see type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and I see the descriptions under each type. For the screen reader and for the focus order, though, it goes top to bottom, left to right. The first thing on the slide is that gray box in the background. I don't need that. I'm getting rid of it. This image of the people, again, that's going to be your decision as a designer. Is this image important to the learning? If it is, add alt text to it, conveying what you want the learner to see. And then if it isn't, get rid of it. I'm getting rid of it. The slide title, that's pretty important. So let's leave that in there. But watch what happens. It goes from type 1 to type 2. We don't want it to go there for a screen reader. After the type 1, we want the description of type 1 under there. So we got to find that. There it is over here. In order, you have the ability to reorganize the focus order. By clicking this Create Custom Focus Order, I can take this box and move it to under the type 1. And so now the screen reader will go from type 1 to the description of type 1. Type 2, I got to find the description for type 2 and drag it under. Then I have this hidden box. I'm going to save this for a second and talk about this hidden box. This hidden box is actually a text box that is under this background. And even though it's not visible on the screen, it is still showing up in my focus order. And so you have to make is that information important? If it isn't, get rid of it. I'm going to get rid of it. All these line dividers are just window dressing. Let's get rid of them.
Yeah, Joe, can you please get wrapped up in about another 5 or 6 minutes, please?
Yes. Yep. And then adjust the order here. And so you adjust the order that way. All right. I'm going to go off on a small tangent here and talk about naming conventions. Because when you look at this focus order, it lists it lists where it is, what layer it's on, and then the text headers or what the object is, and then line 1, line 2. If you've got a bunch of shapes in there, it just identifies line 1, line 2. It doesn't tell you what it is. Get in the habit of renaming your objects so that it's easy to identify. To rename your object, you go over to your timeline, you double click on the object, and you put in a name for it. That way, when you're looking at the focus order, you can easily see what that object is. I had an intern who came on board, and he came with a programming background, and he really helped me establish some naming conventions so that our naming standard conventions for each of our objects was the same throughout the course. I'm going to link to that document. Feel free to peruse that and use that if you find it helpful. But get in the habit of stopping to take time and name your objects so that when you're going through focus orders or when you're creating triggers, you can easily find those objects. Okay, that's my soapbox. I'm getting off of it. One other thing about focus orders. This is that same slide, but this time as an interaction, where when I preview this slide, the user clicks on a button to see the type description. And so they click here, that information appears. Click here, that information appears. But take a look at the focus order. Oh, I didn't reset this. Reset. On the focus order, the very first thing on the focus order isn't what's up at the top left. It is what's up at the top left on the very top layer. And so now I have to start adjusting focus orders to accommodate for the layers that I have. For this, again, you're going to create a custom order. Take out all the stuff that isn't important. Find the button that interacts, that creates the interaction. So on this case, they're clicking this oval 1 to see the information on layer 1. So I'm going to drag all the information from layer 1 down to under oval 1. This picture, again, you decide whether it's important or not. But the key is to make sure that the information on each layer appears right after the interaction that shows that layer. and adjust it that way. Okay. Another thing that I'll talk about, a sighted user will look at this slide and see there are 4 buttons, but a visually impaired learner or a learner that's using a screen reader may not see that there are 4 buttons on here. And so one of the things that I do is I add some, you can add alt text to anything. I add alt text to this text box that says, hey, select each type to review, and there are 4 buttons on this screen, so that the screen reader reads that information, and now the screen reader user knows that there are 4 buttons to look for. It's just an extra step that will help communicate what's on the screen to your learners. You can also access the alt text by right-clicking on an object and going down to accessibility. And here, you can uncheck it. This will take it out of the focus order automatically, and this will be allow you to edit the alt text there. Okay, that's me talking very fast and a lot of things. A couple other things. I do 3 tests when I complete a course. I test it regularly to check and make sure it works. I think we all go do that. Make sure the course works. I do a second test to see if I can navigate the course using only a keyboard. Put the mouse in a drawer, try and navigate through the keyboard, through the course using just the tab key and enter key. Then I test it with a screen reader. Does the screen reader read everything that I want it to read in the order I want it to read? There are a couple of screen readers out there. You can spend money for JAWS, or you can use NVDA, which is free. Windows also comes with a screen reader. I haven't done much testing with that one, but that's an option as well. Run those tests to make sure that you've done your due diligence for your courses. Okay, I'm going to stop and breathe now.
Okay, the floor is open for questions. What would you like to discuss with Joe?
I'm going to scroll through the chat and see what came up in chat, if there was anything.
Well, while you're doing that, let me ask a question. It looks as if Articulate has really taken this seriously, and there are a lot of really time-saving things that you can use. Nonetheless, it does take time. Do you have a rough estimate as to how much time, say, in percentage of the project that it takes to add the 3 levels that you were talking about?
So we use, I actually do. I don't know about percentage, but I'll tell you, it takes me anywhere from additional 15 to 30 hours just for the accessibility checks. That includes captions and focus order on all the slides. And that's for about a 30, 45 minute course. So I have I might be able to find a link for it. A work activity log that we use to kind of track how long things take for us. And this was important because we had to have communications with our administrators who want e-learning developed yesterday. And we said we can't get it done. And so we developed this work activity log to show them not only here's how long it takes us to do these things, but when you change directions on us in the middle of a project, here's how long it added. And so if I can find a link to that, I'll share that document with you if you all are interested.
Are you able to pick and choose if you're training somebody for a job that requires vision or requires hearing? Can you do just 2 out of the 3 that's appropriate for that particular course?
No, because you don't know who's going to access your course, and you don't know what their disabilities may be. I've started turning on closed captioning on everything because I'm old and I really can't hear what's going on anymore. And it really is some of these accessibility things that we build in for accessibility purposes are stuff that even people without disabilities are using. And so, and the last thing you want to do is have 3 different versions of your course. Here's the regular version, here's the one with captions, and here's the one with the focus order, because that becomes 3 courses you have to maintain. If you get it all done once with one course, then you're saving yourself time and you're making it accessible for everybody. If you start siloing it out and saying, hey, if you have a disability, you have to go over here, then it's this perception of separation. And am I getting the same thing that a sighted user is?
Okay, thank you.
I see Douglas asked a question around non-technology and structure delivery. Here's what I'll tell you. If you're providing documents or handouts or PowerPoints for your learners in these, maybe an instructor-led class, make sure that you have an accessible version of your manual, of your student manual available. We've had blind users come through our instructor-led classes, and we say, here's the manual in a PDF form, but we didn't check our PDF to make sure that we'd done all the things we needed to make sure a PDF was accessible. And so it was harder for them to read through that. So for your instructor-led classes, your non-technical classes, the documents, the PowerPoints, take the time to make sure that you've ensured that they're accessible as well. Microsoft has a series of videos. If you do a search for Microsoft accessibility, they have a series of videos on how to make sure PowerPoints, Word, Excel, and email is accessible. Very short, very quick how-to videos on that. Okay. What other questions y'all have?
I have a question that trips me up all the time when I'm adding buttons and things. I was at a meeting once and they said that you should avoid using the word, the label click or things like that. So do you have a recommendation?
So I've gone back and forth on this with a number of people. And I've heard that as well. Don't use click because click is a sighted thing. But click is also a universally understood command. When you tell somebody to click on something, they're going to know, okay, I got to find something to push. And whether that's with a keyboard or with a mouse, click is there. The standard we're using right now is if there's one button on the screen, I'm telling them to click it. If there's multiple buttons on the screen, I'm telling them to select. Okay, so select each button to review a topic versus click each button. But if there's just one button on there, right now I'm just using click as the command. Yvonne, I know you're also an accessibility guru. Do you have thoughts and comments on this one? Because it's not just the world according to Joe, please.
Well, in our practice, we do gravitate towards select, and we use that as our blanket term so that we're consistent throughout the course for all of our users who are using, assistive devices. On occasion, even in our Word documents, we will word everything to say select or choose. So there's that variation there that we've used to problem solve for that.
And I think the key, Yvonne brings up the key thing is be consistent, okay? Just be consistent through the process. Don't make your users think more than they have to. And so use consistent language through the process.
I was going to comment a mistake that I see people make more often, which is that a lot of times I have no preference on click or select. I think you're right, Joe, that click is like a universally understood term, mouse user or not. But something that I see happen a lot is that people will hyperlink click here. So they say something and then they hyperlink click here. Well, to a screen reader user, that tells them nothing where that's going. So Candace, to answer your question, I would be less worried about click versus select and more worried about what the alt text says for something that you are providing instruction on. Because if you have 10 things that I'll say click here, somebody using a screen reader is just going to hear click here, click here, click here, and have no context for what those items are.
Storyline 360, when it first came out, didn't read hyperlinks right and for the screen reader. And so we had to start using invisible buttons, a a shape that's set at 99% transparency and putting alt text behind it to say, this is a link to XYZ. And that's just a habit that's carried over for me in that I'll use alt text to not only say, hey, this is a link to XYZ, but this is a link to a document on XYZ, or this is a link to a website XYZ, so that the user knows exactly where they're going to land, whether it's going to open up a new tab, open up a Word document for them.
Quick question. Some of the features that you've shown us here, are they also available in the PowerPoint plugin, Articulate PowerPoint plugin? Was it the Quiz Maker and Engage? Because I ended up having to convert a lot of PowerPoints, and that seems to be a pretty good tool for doing those quickly. But maintaining this accessibility standard, is that something we could still use?
I don't know. I think when you're playing in PowerPoint with because I haven't played with the plugin since Storyline 1, and so I don't know how it behaves. I'm guessing that it's bound by the requirements of making a PowerPoint accessible and making sure that you've done the steps to make sure your PowerPoint slides are accessible. But I haven't played with it enough to know. Thanks, Douglas.
Any other questions?
As always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or need help, please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Or you can email the email address that I put at the beginning.
Let me thank you all for being here, joining us this evening, and say that next month we're going to be talking about tips, tricks, and best practices, the things you may wish you had known about and started using a long time ago. And you may bring your own tips, tricks, and best practices if you would like, and be prepared to discuss and improve what is offered. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Vaughn, thank you for being part of this. We certainly appreciate it.
I didn't say anything too insane that you go, what is Joe talking about? No.
No, I think you did great. I really appreciated hearing your practice, and I love knowing how other people problem solve for accessibility. There are different routes we can all take, and It's great to know that there's overlap. So I feel like, yes, I'm doing it the way Joe's doing it. I'm okay.
And I notice in your avatar, your lips aren't moving while you speak.
I don't have the. I haven't got to that point yet of making them work quite right. So still working on that. Still working on that. Right. I got my hands working though. So I'm happy about that.
Oh man. So do you have that pina colada fixed for me yet?
No, well, I changed rooms. I'm actually, I am here. I'll show you.
Yeah,
because this is a public room.
Where are you?
And so there's a couple people that were talking, and I'm going to move my screens around so I can show you where I'm at.
Oh, yeah, you mean that there are other avatars in that same environment with you?
Oh yeah, this is a public environment. This is a public space. There was somebody chit-chatting a little too much in the other room, so I decided to come up to the space to the satellite and look over at Earth. But cool, good stuff. Thank you very much, Joe. Again, this is good information. I've been struggling with accessibility. I always get the little indicators on some of my courses that that it's not meeting the accessibility requirements, and I just just decorative image, and just move on down the line.
If you ever get a chance, watch a screen reader user go through your course. That's very educational and humbling at the same time.
Okay, Joe, thank you a bunch. Yeah. And Yvonne and Kevin, thank you for sticking around. And Kevin, thank you for the 3D demonstration.
Yeah, I want to go play with that now. Thank you, everyone. John, thank you. Learning from each other. That's right. Learning from each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're honored to have you both here on at the same time. So I'm going to click end here, and I see dinner call. I hear dinner calling.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and
have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.